Hello everybody and welcome back to another My Porch Prints video. This is Kyra and today we're going to be doing something just a little bit different. Instead of like a tutorial for a project, we are actually going to be talking about how to develop your personal style. So this can be for like an individual project, or it could be for your like artistic style as a whole, and maybe like the types of journals that you might like to make. So this is kind of to help you determine like that personal overall style when creating a journal. Alright, so how this is going to go is I'm going to kind of break down the different aspects that I sort of go through and use when I'm trying to determine the style of my journal and how I want it to look. And then I'll also kind of give you guys like a really quick guide at the very end that you can follow whenever you start a journal if you are kind of somebody who maybe struggles with knowing exactly what they want to do when they begin a project. So to begin, I usually start with the purpose of my journal. Like, what is the use that it is going to have? This can really help steer your project and make it more cohesive and less likely to get stuck in a creative rut. So some of the options you might have for a journal are, for example, a writing journal. If that's like its primary use, that'll kind of determine like how much writing space you leave in the journal versus if maybe it was a drawing journal. That'll help you determine that maybe instead of lined pages, you want blank pages and more space for drawing in your journal, something like that. All right, another type of journal you can create is an inspiration journal. Now this is something like maybe if you are creating a journal inspired by a book or a character or even a holiday, it's sort of like themed around this central figure of sorts. So for example, I did one that was based on Edgar Allan Poe, and when I was making the journal, I kind of thought about what it would be like if it was a journal that had been created by like a detective who was investigating Poe's life and mysterious death. And maybe that's a little out there conceptually for some people, but it did help me kind of find the direction I wanted the journal to go in and how I wanted to decorate it. So, you know, if you're creating an inspiration journal, that can kind of help you decide, you know, how much writing space you want versus how much, you know, creative ephemera you might want to put in it. Just kind of helps decide what the journal's purpose will be overall. Another type of journal you might make, or like another use or purpose for it, would be as an art journal. So this kind of means like the journal is a work of art in and of itself. It's not necessarily meant to just be a place for writing so much as it is like a place for creation, where you kind of make things that go in the journal and fill it up and make it like very layered and, you know, intricate, and there's a lot to that goes into it, so there's a lot to see, and it's kind of like an art piece that's just meant to be something pretty that sits on a table. Maybe it kind of gives guests something to look through while they're, you know, waiting for coffee or something like that, or it can just be something that you yourself can have as like just a piece of art that you made, and it's just something pretty to look through. Another type of journal could be a gift journal. This could be a journal that you are giving to someone as a present, and when making a gift journal, you kind of want to consider who it's for. You know, is it for a child or an adult? Is it for somebody who is a crafter or a journaler? So, you know, if it's for a journaler, you might want to put more lined pages. If it's for a crafter, you might want to fill it with lots of like fussy cuts and loose ephemera pieces for them to find and use in their own journals, things like that. And last but not least, one of the purposes that I could think of for a junk journal would be a diary or an album. So, you know, if you're making something like that, you might want to make lots of like little fold-out envelopes and pockets and places to store like photos or memories, or maybe like snippets of poems or recipe cards, things like that. So it kind of, having the use or purpose for your journal determined can really help you narrow down what you want it to look like as you begin to work. All right, another couple of quick things to decide now that you've kind of got maybe a use or purpose in mind. And if you don't, that's okay. We can kind of work off of these other things that might help. Like sometimes I go into a journal without really a purpose decided, but I have some of these other things, these other elements picked out in my head, and then the use comes as I work. So some other things to think about would be color. whether you like lots of colors or maybe you like very little and you want to stick to like a neutral color theme. Sometimes I'll decide that like, oh, I'm gonna use a bunch of greens in my journal. That's what I did with that Daydreaming Green journal that I made. I just stuck to like a neutral tone with some like pale green color schemes and just kind of worked with that palette exclusively, and that kind of gave the entire journal a very cohesive look throughout that, you know, was very appealing to me. But some people really like to make things look very like homemade and junky, and that can be accomplished by having lots of different colors. So whatever you want to do is perfectly fine. There's no wrong answer, but just kind of narrowing down what kind of color scheme you might want to have can also help, you know, hone in the style of your journal artistically overall. All right, next thing to determine is whether you want your journal to be clean versus messy. Now, again, this can be something that just sort of happens organically as you work, but it can also be something that you predetermine. So, for example, with my sepia and ivory journal, I predetermined that I wanted things like sticking out from the pages. I wanted it to have lots of layers and details and flips and pockets. I was purposefully going for kind of a messy look there. Versus with some of my other journals, I was purposefully going for something kind of clean and neat with sort of seamless or hidden tuck spots with a focus on kind of symmetry and minimalism. So, you know, you can kind of choose anywhere on that spectrum to make your journal, but kind of knowing ahead of time can help you plan little details like what sort of items you want to make. All right, next up would be aging or distressing of your journal or the pieces going into it. For example, you can go for something that's really aged, really distressed with like coffee dyed pages or distress ink, maybe tears and wrinkles of the pages. Something that makes it look like it was very well loved and used a long time ago. Kind of just that aging process of your book can be really interesting. But you can also go on the other end of the spectrum and go for more of like a well loved and well taken care of heirloom, something that's very light ink or none at all with like delicate lace and beads, and just keeping things really clean can also have a very beautiful and elegant look to it. So sometimes it helps to know ahead of time to know which supplies to grab, and like, you know, if you're going to have coffee dyed papers, that's one of the first things you're going to want to do. So it can kind of help to know how much aging you want to help you prep and prepare as you create your journal. All right, another thing to help you kind of determine your style here would be to determine what kind of like covers and bindings and the size of the journal you want. So maybe you want a soft cover, or you want a hard cover. Maybe you want the book to be really large, or maybe you want it to be mini. Maybe you want it to look like an old-fashioned like giant tome, or maybe you want it to look kind of hidden like a stack of envelopes. You might want to try sewing or a ring bound or a brad bound or a tie-in for, you know, securing those signatures into your journal. And each one of those is going to give your journal like a slightly different look. So kind of determining which one of those you like can help you sort of hone in on exactly what your journal is going to become. All right, next, let's talk about where to get inspiration and like what to do when you're stuck. This happens to me almost every single time I work on a journal or do a project. It's really common that somewhere either beginning or near the end or sometimes right in the middle, I get very discouraged and I'm not sure if what I'm doing is coming together or if I've lost my vision. And it's really important to not get discouraged. Sometimes you need to step away for a bit and try to find some new inspiration if you're feeling stuck. Some of my best work were projects where I nearly threw it out halfway through. For example, that sepia and ivory journal that we've had so many people say that they love. I got very near to just chucking that thing in the bin because I was convinced it was too messy and no one was going to like it. But I kind of saw it through to the end and it ended up being like one of my favorite pieces, and apparently a lot of people really liked it. So if you're feeling discouraged, try to step away and see some other inspiration and kind of rally yourself. And I encourage you to finish whatever project you're working on, because usually halfway through is when it looks its worst, and by the time you get to the end, then you see it at full completion, and it's so much better than you thought it was going to turn out to be. But if you are stuck, some places you can look for inspiration would be flip through videos. This is something that we have made as well as we've looked up on YouTube. A lot of people will make journals and then do flip throughs of them. And sometimes it can help you to get some new ideas and maybe even a sense of style you might be drawn to, just seeing what other people are making. Which, going along with that, you can find that on like Instagram tags, people who are journaling, or if you join, for example, our Facebook group, a lot of our members will post projects that they're working on, and sometimes just looking through that can give you all sorts of new inspiration. I tend to like look at something someone's made and think, okay, what can I change about this to make it my own? But it can really help me kind of have that like jumping off point to get some inspiration from it. So I would highly recommend, getting on, Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and looking up inspiration. I'm guessing that's what you're doing right now if you found this video. So hello! I hope that you're getting some new ideas just from this video alone. But if you're not, we have tons of playlists you can check out where we've done flip throughs and projects if you're looking for something to kind of maybe spark some new inspiration. And in fact, that would be my second point here. Sometimes I step away from a project and I work on something smaller. So, if I'm getting overwhelmed by the big picture of the journal, I will actually go and work on like a tag or a folio. And sometimes just getting into something smaller and a little bit simpler and creating some littler projects that are going to go into my larger project will kind of help me get started again, and it feels a little less daunting and overwhelming than, oh, I have to make an entire journal. Instead, I'm like, I'll just make some cards, I'll just make some paper clips, I'll just make some folios, and then before I know it, the journal is full to bursting. So sometimes it's good to step away and just kind of work on something small. All right, another place to look for inspiration would be like an overall aesthetic or theme to your journal. So you might, make a journal that is based around like a grunge or a steampunk or like a Victorian theme. Maybe you'll go for something more like Edwardian or elegant or cottagecore or fantasy even. Actually, a lot of our kits from our shop are already sort of centered around various themes. So if you want to kind of make things a little easier on yourself, you could just go to our shop and like look through the kits and find one that you like or connect with, and then kind of go from there. Since that theme is kind of already decided, it can be really good to have like a jumping off point, like inspiration wise, for the journal you want to make. That has been extremely helpful for me for all of my journals. All of my journals are made with our kits, and our kits always give me like that jolt of inspiration I can take and run with whenever I'm making a journal, and it's very helpful for me to have that little jumping off point. So, go ahead and look at various kits or aesthetics and find something that speaks to you, and that can be really helpful when determining kind of that, plus the use of your journal is really kind of like, I think, the core for a lot of the journals that I make. Once I know the use of it, the purpose of it, and I know the theme of it, it's just easy sailing from there. All right, so my last little tip for you guys is to remember it's okay to change your style and to grow and learn with each project. Personally, I try to do at least one new thing in each journal, just to try and challenge myself and push myself creatively, which helps me kind of find what does and does not work for me. And I have found plenty of things that do not work, but some of my best creations came out of those failures. For example, the brad binding method, which has been really fun and a really cool addition, I think, to journaling overall, was something I discovered through an abysmal failure of trying to staple my signatures into my book. So, you never know what's going to work or not, but don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to, make that first journal, and it's okay if it doesn't come out exactly how you wanted it to. It's a learning process, and you will learn a little bit more with each journal you make. So, get out there, make a journal, and have fun with it, and I'm sure whatever you create is going to be beautiful. All right, to sum things up in a really quick guide here, if you're kind of looking for just something step-by-step you can do when making a journal, I would say, number one, pick a kit or a few, find an aesthetic that you like, and then next, go ahead and pick a use for your journal, a purpose for your journal. What do you want this journal to do? Why do you want to make this journal? What's it for? Next, go ahead and pick a size. Do you want it small, medium, large? Are you going to want it really thick and overstuffed, or do you want it really clean and kind of neat and organized? This will kind of be based maybe a little bit more on your use, but it can help just to know which kind of size you're going for. Next would be to pick your cover. Do you want it soft or hard? That'll kind of help you choose which materials you're going to need to make your journal. And then last would be to kind of pick a level of distress. Like, do you want it to be really grungy, really heavily inked, wrinkled, stained? Or do you want to keep things kind of nice and clean, maybe with some like gentle stitching around the border or a little bit of a lace edge, something like that. But overall, keeping it more about the pages themselves and maybe what you're doing with the journal rather than like distressing it beyond capability of writing in or something like that. So pick a kit, pick a use, pick a size, pick a cover, and pick a level of distress. And that should give you a really good jumping off point for the overall style and look and use of your journal. Otherwise, I mean, I hope so. That's kind of the point of this video. So anyway, I hope that you found some new inspiration, some new ideas. Maybe this helped you kind of get out of a creative rut or helped you kind of find a place to begin when creating your next project. If you found this helpful, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you have any other ideas that can kind of help people get inspired. Where do you find inspiration when making journals? I would love to hear about it. Alright, but that is going to end today's video, so thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye!